What's up, everyone? This is Untitled Chapter, and welcome back to another video. Also, before starting, I want to do a bit promotion, or you can say something that I should have done a long time ago. But let me tell you all about my book that is out now. The book is The Satanic Rhapsody, which means a song of Satan, and it is a horror book. So it doesn't have to be like a very PG-13 kind of stuff, but it is basically a horror book that you can read. It's a short book, and I wrote it in a year. I started writing it about a year ago, and it is available on Amazon Kindle for free. And you can read it on your mobile apps as well. You don't need to have a Kindle device to read it. You can read it on your Kindle device. You can read it on your Kindle app, or you can even purchase it. But it is a bit costly because it is self-published under Amazon. So that if you are not from US, it would cost you much more for shipping and stuff. So that was it. You can check out my book. It is trending on number one in horror category right now, but I know that position won't be retained for much long. So right now, it is a great time to buy that book. Now, talking about the main context of this video, and that is The Dark Towers by Stephen King. So I completed this seventh book about a week ago, and it took me some time to overcome the hangover that I had of the series. Talking about the Dark Tower series without giving any spoilers, the series consists of mainly 8 books, and if you read a more extended, like chronology of this book, it can extend to 13 to 14 books. And if you want to read a more extended Dark Tower series, you have to read around 22 books. But as a constant reader, as a reader of Stephen King, I would suggest to follow the order that I followed, which is of 13 books, if I'm not wrong. And it includes Salem's Lot, Stand, Dark Tower 1, Dark Tower 2, Dark Tower 3, Dark Tower 4, Insomnia, Wolves of Kala, Song of Susanna, and The Dark Tower, the final books. So this was it. And now talking about how good the series was. So the first book was a plot setter. It doesn't had that story element that would make you awestruck. It it was just a simple beginning of the story that won't make sense until the last part. Like you would realize the first book is so great when you will end the seventh book, the final book. But when you start the series, the first book might seem a bit boring or monotonous in its aspect because it is more about how the story is set for the second book ahead. Now, in the first part, you encounter Roland, a gunslinger who is probably the last gunslinger, and time is uncertain. So time is not at its usual pace. So you can see that science fiction element in a dark fantasy series. So time is not running as it runs, and there is our protagonist Roland Deschain, who is the last gunslinger, and he is lying on a desert. He's just chasing the man in the black, which is a character from Stephen King's biggest standalone, The Stand. So Roland, the gunslinger, the last gunslinger, is chasing the man in the black, who is Walter O'Deb, just to reach the Dark Tower. And what is Dark Tower? Dark Tower is a epidemic tower that holds life and everyone in this universe. So it is a kind of point where all the life source meet, and it just runs life. Without the Dark Tower, maybe everything will collapse and it will wreak havoc. So basically, this was Dark Tower book one. Now, from the second book, you will start meeting other characters, and without giving the spoiler of the first book, there will be another character, but you will not realize his importance like for another 2 to 3 books. So after that, in the second book, we encounter 3 doors, and these doors open in New York. So our setting was in desert in the first book, but in the second book, we encounter 3 doors that open in different different years of New York. So one door opens in 1970s, and one door is open in 1950s. So I'm not sure about the years right now because I read that book around 4 to 5 months ago. But the concept is that Roland, the gunslinger, is in the desert, and he's still chasing Walter Odin, the man in the black. And now he encounters 3 doors in the desert that will lead him to different people, new characters. And the third book, it is more of a plot setter along with a story setter. Like it has backstories of our new characters that we get in the second book. And then talking about the fourth book is the probably the best book that I read because it had the best back storytelling. Like Roland's backstory was described so beautifully in the fourth book, and the way of describing that story was so intelligent that you can just bow to Stephen King on how great his storytelling skills are. So the fourth story was more about how Roland ended up in the desert, how he started chasing Walter Odin. Then the fifth book is The Wolves of Kala, in which you will encounter another character from Stephen King's previous work. And I'll not spoil it, but he is a character from his earliest work. So you can see the connection of Dark Tower from his starting of the career to the end point where he wrote this book. So it is not the end point of the career, but he in 1999 Stephen King was like injured in an accident, and after that he wrote the final three Dark Tower books in a hurry. So this fifth book came after 1999 after his accident, and then came the sixth book, which is what was the shortest book of the Dark Tower. It had only 128,000 words approx, and it was very fast paced, and it was like the best book that will set the stepping stone. Like it was definitely required for the seventh book to be a masterpiece. So sixth book is just like a hand that supports you while you're falling back. And so the drawbacks of the fifth book, Wolves of Kala, were like well managed by Song of Susanna, which is the sixth book, and now the final seventh book. So the book started off very interestingly. There were so many twists and turns. The characters will face such difficult situations, and you, when you read such a long series of 10 to 13 books, you have a bond created with these characters. You don't want them to get hurt. You don't want them to like fight each other and stuff like that. But things happen. This is a book, and then you just have to wait and keep reading the seventh book to realize what will happen finally in the Dark Tower. And this was the simple uh, review that I can give you without spoilers. Now, this is the part where I'll give the detailed review of the Dark Tower with spoiler, and I'll also tell how I encountered Stephen King. So, starting off, I'll tell the how I came across Stephen King. So, last year, around like Halloween month, there is a group called Book is Santa discussion, and it is off a great website where you can buy books. Book is Santa, and we had a book club where there was a Halloween month going on, and we were reading Stephen King books because he's the master of horror. So there, the coordinator of the group, the coordinator of the month, who was Gufran Ahmed, a very great friend and a very great person who introduced me to Stephen King. And he told me to start my Stephen King journey with Christine. And I started reading Christine. I dropped it up quite some, like a few times. I was like very uh, confused, like whether it'll get better or whether I am that good enough to encounter work of such a great person. But he told me that I should keep reading, and eventually I loved Christine. Then I read The Dead Zone. Then I read The Carrie, and like not The Carrie. I read Carrie, and I kept reading Mist, and I read approx four Stephen King stories in a single month. And talking about Gufran Bhai, he just introduced me to whole Stephen King genre, chronology, and do's and don'ts. And because of him, I was able to know Stephen King better, and like he was the reason why I started reading Stephen King. Thanks to Gufran Bhai for introducing me to Stephen King, because of him I'm able to read Stephen King. And who doesn't want to read such an amazing author? Like he's a master storyteller. You cannot compare him to any other storyteller because his style is so different, and it is not for everyone for sure. Like it is only for, I think Stephen King's stories are for people who are able to dedicate themselves and have patience to understand a story so well. Like his story doesn't have to be about endings, and the Dark Tower readers know it. His stories are more about the journey and the characters and how they evolve in difficult situations, how they fight their own demons. And now talking about the Dark Tower series, I started Gunslinger and I was very happy with it. Like people often complain that they don't like Gunslinger, but I really enjoyed Gunslinger. The setting part of it was very good. Like that, all this scene of Magus Desert and all the like references to like Bible were quite accurate. Like I searched them, and I don't quite remember what was exactly in that book apart from setting, Jake, and the Man in the Black, because I read it a long time ago. So sorry if I say anything wrong. But after that, when I started reading Drawing of the Three, I was like mind blown. The concept of holding a door and opening it into any time was amazing, and how that connected our world to the world of Roland was very great. Like two different worlds come together through just a simple door, and that was amazing. We got two new characters, Eddie Dean and Susanna. And after that, the third book was a bit not a letdown, but I would say like it was more focused on setting, and the setting for the story and setting for the characters. Like it told us about how Eddie Dean survived his crazy brother and how he like evolved as a person. We got backstory of Susanna in it, but we were not getting to the point. Like we were not aware who Roland exactly was, and that was encountered in the fourth book. And in the fourth book, we had Roland, we had Jake, we had Eddie, we had Susanna, and we had Oy as well. So we had all the main characters of the quartet. And by that time, the concept of Ka was very clear, and the concept of Beam, Shadrick, and everything was coming around. And the fourth book was a point where the series stood so strong that, and like even if it ended there, I think people wouldn't have been disappointed if there were if its ending had something related to Tower. and in short, we would have seen Roland reach the tower. Like, it would have been a satisfying point. Like, I don't think many people would have complained. But then Stephen King like didn't write the Dark Tower book, and he met an accident in 1999, and so then the series evolved. So the fifth book, The Wolves of Cala, started like very abruptly for me. Like, no disrespect, but I didn't understand what that concept was going around. I knew who Callahan was, and entry of Callahan was heroic. Like, it felt like meeting an old friend after a very long time. And slowly, when we got to that part where we were introduced with backstory of Father Callahan, it was so good. Like, another great backstory aspect that we got in the fourth book, we got the backstory of Roland and how sad it was for our gunslinger to lose the love of his life. And then fifth book, we understood how miserable life of Father Callahan has been. And then the end of the fifth book was like the greatest comeback you ever see. It was greater than a cricket comeback or a WWE comeback. Stephen King introduced his own book in his own book, and it is as crazy as it sounds. So important. The sixth book, I guess, in my opinion, like it provided such a strong base for the seventh book that even if seventh book would have been a little bit disappointing, you would have liked it anyways because the sixth book was so strong. So the sixth book had so many different things going on at the same time, but Stephen King wrote that whole time scene or whole book so well that it blended and came out perfectly. And I was not disappointed a single bit. I think Song of Susanna was the best book of the Dark Tower series, and how it provided a base for the last book. And it was like great how Susanna, along with her new split personality Mia, was encountering her child, and how she met the man in the black. Then we saw how Jake and Father Callahan, two people of such a different age group, working out together. And then we saw Roland and Eddie, the two people who had a bit of clashes earlier in the series, but like we saw in Song of Susanna how close they were, like apart from their grudges, how close they were and how good friends they were. Like, you can say Eddie and Roland were more like brothers than friends, and to each other they respected each other and they loved each other very much, because you saw that in the whole series. Eddie would have run back into his New York, but he accompanied Roland, and Roland also cared about Eddie. So this was it. And then we have a special entry of Stephen King, and how that thing evolved was so good. Like, people might have hated that thing that Stephen King introduced himself as a character, but in my perspective, I would say that it was such a wise move. Like, I don't think anybody has ever done that in literature, or maybe they have, but the way Stephen King did, like, he introduced himself and avoided his own accident in order to continue the Dark Tower series, was so insane. Like, it was so mind blowing. You really cannot neglect that part. It was the greatest moment of Stephen King's writing. I think people would have appreciated it if there was a Dark Tower series or movie that was very well made. People would have appreciated this part of Stephen King, but they are not aware. They are aware of Shining, they are aware of it, they are aware of Shawshank Redemption. But if there will be a great adaptation of the Dark Tower, they'll definitely love this part of Stephen King, where he introduced himself as a character. And I think Joe Hill can play the role of young Stephen King very well. They look very similar. So this was it. Now, talking about the seventh book, it started off so good. Like, the sacrifice of Father Callahan was so heroic, and then we saw at Diwar Toy how Eddie died, and then we moved ahead, and to protect Stephen King killed Jake once again, and then we moved with Susanna, and how Susanna like decided not to go ahead even though she wanted to see the tower once. She decided not to go ahead. Then we met Stuttering Bill, and we met a character from Insomnia who eventually erased the Crimson King. And this was the like a kind of part where people were very dissatisfied. We were always talking about Stephen King and Randall Flagg, and the ending Stephen King gave to Randall Flagg was maybe okay, because for most part of the series we missed him. Like, apart from the first and fourth book, there was no mention of Randall Flagg in a major part. So that was it. He was not the main antagonist, even though he was mentioned from the beginning. And so even the end of Flag was okay, but there should have been a bigger battle, a more brutal battle between Crimson King and Roland. Like, that was a bit weird part. Like, it was very bizarre to see Crimson King and Roland meet like that. I wanted something that involved more action and more clash between Roland and Crimson King, but it ended how it ended. And the part of Mordred was also good, like how Stephen King used Mordred to kill Flag was okay. Like, he needed to erase Flag from the Dark Tower series and to not stop Roland, and he did it in his own way. So that was good. And then the ending part was epic. The way Roland kept like calling out the names of the people who had accompanied him to the Dark Tower, who always helped him, his quartet, Susan Delgato, and everybody. And that was so heroic. Like, you can feel the vibe. Like, you are go Roland and just get to the tower, and then you reach the Dark Tower where Roland encounters the biggest truth, and that is his life. And there is, I don't know how to interpret it, but as it shows that the tower always held a powerful force, and that is our own life. So the Dark Tower consists of nothing but our own life. We are the powerful creator of our own life. One side we see how Eddie, Jake, and Susanna meet each other. We unfortunately lost Oi in the process, and that was a bit hurtful the way Roland talked to Oi before Oi eventually died. But then when Roland reached the Dark Tower, we saw him walk up to the stairs, climbing up 19 stairs, and then seeing each part of his life. And we realized that Dark Tower is nothing but our own life, how we live. The powerful source is our own self, and like, the Dark Tower consists of everything. It has our lives. The most powerful thing that we have that holds our life is our experience and how we grow. And then Roland reaches at the top where he opens the door and he ends up in the desert. And the line comes, the man in black fled across the desert, and the gunslinger followed. The wheel of car rolls again, and Roland goes on his quest with no memory of what happened all this time. And this is a loop. This is a There are various interpretation of this, but Stephen King always gave hint about it, like death for everyone but not you, gunslinger. So there were Easter eggs that we missed, but at the same time the ending was quite good. If you think about it, how we have always heard about the legends and about the stories in which the hero never dies, the villain never dies, they keep on chasing each other forever. And this is a kind of story. Like, our car never ends, the wheel of car rotates. So no matter what you do, no matter in which shape or size or which condition, which world you live in, all things come around and go around like a wheel. And that was the Dark Tower. I really loved this book. It was so good. I hate the way the adaptation ruined its reputation, but anyways, we can hope for a better series in future. And it should be a series. Like, a single movie or a single season of a show cannot depict how great Dark Tower was. There should be a series of movies or series of TV show like that govern or that cover all the aspect of the Dark Tower. And this was it. Like, that's all I can say. There is so much that I want to express, and I wish I could, but this is Stephen King. This is his greatest work, and I'm probably very happy that I've finished this book before I turn 19, because maybe, who knows, I'll be the gunslinger. I'll just wake up on the night of my birthday on a desert, and I'll encounter the man in black. So this was a poor joke, lame joke. And now this was it. Thank you for watching. Do read Dark Tower. A few books had aspect that you won't like, but majority part of this whole series is very great. I'll rank the book from the beginning. So at number one we have The Stand, then we have Wizard and Glass, then we have Susanna, then we have Susanna, and then we have the Drawings of the Three, and at the same position we have Salem Slot. Then we have Wastelands. Then we have the Gunslinger, and the top position always stays for the seventh book because it concludes everything. So in short, this was my ranking. This was my view on the Dark Tower series. Thank you for watching, and do check my book out if you want to. It would really help for a budding author like me. And thank you for watching. Peace out. Stay safe.